Welcome to another episode of Ambitious Legacy. This episode has been a long time coming. I took a little bit of a hiatus and now I'm back. And I was actually working out this morning. I wasn't actually planning on doing a video this week, but I was working out this morning and I was listening to scripture, which I do sometimes. And something came up that I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Made me think about, leaving an inheritance and just what we think about leaving an inheritance as. We think about money, we think about houses, we think about accounts. But that's all good and well, and that's wonderful. However, there is a little bit more to that. In order for that money and that wealth and the blood, sweat, and tears that we put into amassing that wealth to really be valuable to the next generation, it needs to come with more. It needs to come with wisdom. It needs to come with intention. It needs to come with direction, right? And so we could be doing more harm than good by giving someone who is, young and, maybe irresponsible, maybe not having all of the tools that life brings us as we grow and mature. We might be doing more harm than good at just like dumping a bunch of money or assets in their hands, right? Or in their possession. And so I've seen so many times where young people receive an inheritance and then they have people who are either looking to befriend them for the wrong reason and take advantage of them. They are making bad investments or putting the money in places that are not really going to grow, not really going to be good for them in the future. And or they're just mismanaging. They don't know how to manage, as you grow. And like I said, as you grow and amass wealth, as you mature, you learn certain things and you end up getting to where you are because you've learned how to deal. You've learned how to steward. You've learned how to take care of the things that you have. And when someone is that's just being handed to someone, they're not necessarily having those things. So I think it's important for us to really, as you're creating an estate plan, as you're leaving this legacy, that you're leaving the wisdom and the tools, right, that are going to actually help them thrive rather than hinder or harm them, right? So the scripture that I came across was Galatians 1 through 3, I believe it was. And it's basically just saying that uh, leaving, actually, a child who receives an inheritance from their parent is really no different than a slave, right? Because they are really bound or they're limited by the trustees and the guardians that are in charge of them. Although they do own these assets, they don't have the liberty to deal with them as they please, right? And in this particular sense, it is good because we want to put in limitations so that we are protecting. We want to put in limitations so that we are allowing for longevity because we do want to be a blessing. Not only do we probably want our name and our family name and our lineage to continue, but we want it to progress, right? We want, with every generation, we want a little bit more. We want a little bit easier time so that you don't have to worry about the bare necessities, about the basics, but you can worry about being innovative and creative and changing the world, essentially, right? So there are three areas that could really become an issue when you are leaving an estate, when you're leaving a legacy, whether you've done an estate plan or you haven't done an estate plan. Three sort of areas that we want to make sure that we're covering, which would mean you need to do an estate plan, right? You want to make sure that you're accounting for lack of wisdom, right? The lack of experience that this person has with managing these assets, dealing with these assets, make sure that they grow, making sure that they're not, being taken advantage of, making sure that they're not vulnerable. And all these things require information, right? Life lessons that you have learned, information that you can leave so that they understand how to do it. It's almost like leaving a how-to manual or a quick start guide to the assets that you are leaving behind. We also want to account for lack of discipline, right? Not knowing how to maybe necessarily save, not knowing how to maybe necessarily invest, or being too impulsive, not knowing that certain things need to be treated a certain way. So making sure that we're leaving those type of instructions for that. And then also the one that I find the most important is leaving a framework for decision making. How do you come about making decisions as it relates to these particular different types of things, as it pertains to real estate, as it pertains to tenants, as it pertains to investments, How are these decisions being made? What is your process for decision making? It may not be super granular, like in super detail, but high level. What are the things that you consider when you're making these important decisions for your life? I was listening to someone recently, and they were saying something called key decisions, right? Key decisions that will potentially make a big impact on your life versus everyday decisions, right? What am I going to wear? What am I going to eat? Whatever. But key decisions that are going to impact your life that one way or the other in that fork in the road can be a significant impact. How are we making those decisions? So that's, again, one of the things that we want to leave instructions. So to sum up, basically, a legacy, you want to be leaving a legacy of values. So legacy of values is your beliefs, your principles, and your approach to life. Second, you want to have a framework for decision making, teaching them how to handle wealth, relationships, and even adversity with wisdom, especially the adversity piece, because when things go wrong, people tend to want to throw in the towel and throw up their hands. And if they know that this is to be expected, then and there is a framework for dealing with these type of things, then that will be extremely valuable. And then third, a spiritual legacy. For many of us, faith is the foundation of everything. And passing down your faith and your understanding of life's greater purpose is an inheritance in and of itself, especially since faith can help you to learn how to deal with decisions and adversity and problems. And also, faith typically has discipline built in. So if that's something that's important to you, then I would also recommend that you include that in as a piece of your legacy as well. So how can we do this? How can we sort of leave this type of legacy that is more than just the things, right? So one, obviously we want to account for the things. So you want to create a trust, something where you have a little bit more control over how these assets are going to be distributed and how the individual that's going to benefit from them, how they're going to actually experience this in their lives. With certain types of estate planning, like just having a will or not having anything concrete in place, you can't control how, you can't control when, right? And so if you want to include that level of protection, you then want to look towards preparing, having a trust prepared for you. And not only that, but creating certain milestones within that trust or certain levels of responsibility that need to be accomplished or that need to be met so that the child, the young adult, what have you, will be able to benefit from this estate and it will actually bless their lives versus hindering their lives. And in addition to that, you get to say before they achieve that age of majority, when they start to actually receive distributions or receive cash in hand or whatever in their possession or ownership, you get to say as they're growing up, what level of what do you want their experience to be like? Do you want them to be able to travel the world and learn that way? Do you want them to have a formal education, or do you want them to have any sort of financial literacy education, things of that nature? You really get to design what you would like things to look like for them. And this is not to make it a burdensome thing where it now becomes a bigger task, like, oh my God, now I have to think through all these things. You can start where you are and you can start to continue to build on this picture that you'd like to see. I don't want to say like to see because obviously that means you're not here. But in the unfortunate event that you are not here, these are the things that you want to be sure will take place because you've left those instructions in place. The second opportunity is to write a legacy letter, right? A legacy letter is basically going to say what sort of wisdom you would like to leave for your loved ones. You could do this in a letter form, you could do this in a video form, you could talk about life lessons, you could talk about the things that made you, the things that molded you, the experiences that you had in life, in childhood, things that you know about your family members, all types of things that tie into your legacy, who you are and who your child is. I can't tell you, there's so many things that I learned about, people in my family that came before me that kind of helped me to hold myself in a higher regard or really boost my self-worth as to okay, knowing where you come from. One of the things is that I realized that my grandmother was actually an entrepreneur, where I thought I was like the first entrepreneur in the family, and then I realized she was a seamstress. She used to make clothes for people, and people would pay her to create clothes. That's when getting custom made clothing was like really a big thing. And so she was a seamstress. She had clients. She had a business, even though it didn't really look like what I think of today as a business, and it was an actual business like that. She was living off of that. She was making money by having clients and providing a service. And so that was one thing that made me feel like, oh shoot, like this is part of the legacy. I really do have this entrepreneurial spirit because this is where it came from, right? I can sort of tie it back to that, and it gives sort of validation to the things that you may think that you're purpose for, right? So that's number one. And then two, my on my mother's side, her uncle is a doctor. And I also was thinking like, oh, I'm the first professional in the family, but I'm really not. My mother's uncle is a doctor, and he ran a practice, multiple practices, and had a very successful, long and successful career. And so that also, helps me to think like, wow, if he came here as an immigrant, got his license, built his business, that gives me a leg up because I was actually born here. So I should have an advantage, right, into seeing where I could be or where I can get to based upon where I came from, right? So it is extremely valuable for your family members to know like where they came from, what the intentions were that you had for their life. Even if it's not your immediate child, even if it's the next generation, they will be able to pick these things up and say, oh wow, this is where I came from and this is what I'm purpose for. So if you found this video helpful and you want to know more about estate planning, about putting a legacy, all these pieces together like I have explained to you, please like the video, please leave a comment, and also my information will be in the comments. I actually run a law firm called the Ambitious Legacy Firm. And so I'm really this year getting back into this piece of my life, this piece of my purpose, after doing a lot of soul searching and kind of making sure that I'm operating in the fullest level of integrity and operating in the things that I'm, purposed to do. So back at it again. Please feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to see what we can do to help you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. I will see you next time.